Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Green Through and Through by Another Fucking Robin. This is Chapter 28. Peter goes out as Spider-Man again the next night, but this time he does it right. Now, anyone who knows Peter Parker knows that he has a terminal inability to accept help, much preferring to obsess and self-destruct over accepting even a shred of assistance. That said, Peter has also learned to listen to his body over his time as a masked vigilante. Peter isn't stupid, he's just stubborn. But even Peter recognizes that things like food, drink, and rest are essential for general health, let alone trying to sustain a vigilante lifestyle with a hyperactive metabolism. This means that, despite his inherent reluctance to listen to logic, Peter knows that eating dinner before vigilanting is a good idea. Result? The relentless growling of his stomach, the warning itch in his gums, and the combined efforts of a couple dozen heroes residing rent-free in his skull pestering him non-stop managed to successfully convince him to go to Martha's and eat dinner before patrolling. In fact, he even goes one further and stops by the speakeasy for some snacks and some good conversation. Quite the feat, especially considering that Peter feels immense guilt for continually eating Carmen's food and not repaying her kindness. Can we get a W in the chat? W. What on earth does that mean, Parker? This is another meme thing, isn't it, Shuri? T'Challa sighs. It sure is. Both Luke and Shuri say at the same time, though Shuri says it with an air of affrontedness, as if there was even the slightest possibility of it being anything else, and she's disappointed and offended that he entertained such an outlandish idea. Luke says it with a deeply resigned, if slightly fond air of disappointment, as if there was never even the slightest possibility of it being anything else, and he hated that he's so acclimatized to the fact. I think he wants us to congratulate him, Mantis says timidly, before turning to Peter and asking, "Is that right?" "Yeah, Mantis, right on the money," he assures the alien, earning an excited squeal and a round of happy claps. "Yay," Bucky drawls sarcastically. "You're able to do the bare minimum to keep yourself alive. Gold star." Peter preens under his mental gold star and leaps off the lamppost he was perching on. "God, you are insufferable." "Thank you, Mr. Wilson." Peter does try. Reputation to uphold and all that. Bat chat. Steph, 11:43 p.m. Is anyone accidentally covering my patrol route for tonight? Someone is cock-blocking all the crimes in Chinatown. Tim, 11:43. Not me. Damien, 11:43. Father and I are patrolling the fashion district. Cass, 11:44. Thumbs down. Dick, 11:44. I'm in blood right now. Babs, 11:46. It also isn't Kate, Luke, or Jean-Paul. They're all accounted for, and Jay doesn't tend to go that far south. None of the cams in the area caught any foul play. Are you out tonight, Harper? Unknown user, 11:49. Confirming that it wasn't me. Harper, 11:52. Sorry it took me so long to respond, goons. Harper, 11:53. And I'm over on the east side in the City Hall district, so I'm not cock-blocking you, Steph. Steph, 11:53. Fuck, who else could it be? Steph, 11:54. This family's too big. Damien, 11:54. I suggest killing Drake to fix that issue. Tim, 11:54. Fuck you too, pipsqueak. Harper, 11:54. Maybe it's Spider Guy. Steph, 11:54. First to catch Spider Guy gets 15% off the blackmail I have on them deleted. Tim, 11:54. Bet. Damien, 11:54. I took you up on your offer, Brown. Harper, 11:54. Count me in. Cass, 11:54. Thumbs up, cancel emoji, black box emoji, envelope emoji, camera emoji. Steph, 11:54. Of course, Cass. If you win, you can pick the movie on movie night instead. Cass, 11:54. Smile emoji. Duke, 11:54. Hey, no fair. I'm in my PJs. Tim, 11:55. You snooze, you lose, Duke. Tim, 11:55. Literally. Duke, 11:55. Frowny face. Gotham crime, Peter finds, is similar to New York in a lot of ways. The clearly affiliated gangs, the opportunistic petty criminals, the back alley drug deals, but it's also different from New York. Some differences are so hauntingly, glaringly obvious that Peter finds himself questioning how he even compared the two. The liquid that stains needles is a bright toxic green. The gunshots are a constant chorus. The siren posts every few blocks are a reminder of the danger that lurks in the shadows. Gotham has a sort of desolate, desperate, feral air to it. Definitely a close relative of the classic NYC stubborn indifference, but also totally unique in an achingly sad sort of way. Both cities stay in their lanes, don't go poking in alleys that they don't have any business in. But the difference is that New Yorkers do it with a distinct grumble, maybe an eye roll. Is there a guy in my dumpster? Maybe. All that matters is that they're gone before I need to empty the trash. Is there a spaceship in the sky? Yeah, sure is. As long as it's not on my house or my favorite restaurant, then I don't care. Every New Yorker has seen some wild shit, has gotten their office building smashed up by a villain fight, or their subway ride is interrupted by an explosion. New Yorkers have evolved past being fazed by things like this. New Yorkers don't really let the craziness around them affect them. New Yorkers learn. They learn quickly, and then they adapt. Gothamites, well, they're a bit different. Gothamites hold the same unbothered attitude, but they all have a hunger in their smells, a fear in their eyes. Gothamites hold a certain cornered viciousness in their blood, and it makes the whole city flow differently. Gothamites are born crazy to level the playing field. New York is like a jungle, predators and prey, give and take, constant life and death and movement and growth. New York is an ecosystem. Everything is specialized for its specific ecological niche. There is always rotting matter on the floor, but there is also a bird singing in the canopy, a ray of sunshine breaking through the leaves. Gotham is like a cave system. Everything is blind, led by only instincts, the smell of a carcass nearby. Gotham is the click, click, click of the legs of a millipede against stone, is the rustling, shrieking sound of hundreds of thousands of bats, is the steady flow from one stream to another. Gotham is constantly screaming, constantly having its screams echoed back at it. In Gotham, there is an ingrained sense of survival, but there is also a strong camaraderie in the darkness. And in the camaraderie, there is hope, there is light. There is the soft glow of the bioluminescent moss, clinging to the cave wall dotted about like stars. Peter swings around Gotham, drawn to where the echoing screams are loudest. And even though there is mistrust in the gazes of people he meets, Peter thinks that he helps, if only a little. After all, the only way to find yourself in the darkness is to hold a trusted hand and make it through together. Peter, however, isn't trying to help the people of Gotham alone. Far from it, really. Gotham, like New York, has a veritable bounty of vigilantes and heroes. And, like back home, the heroes here are territorial. He hears the telltale crack of a cape in the wind as he breaks up a drug deal, long since familiar with the sound from long stakeouts with Midnight. He tracks the thrumming steady beat of a stalker's heart while he swings around the streets. He can barely hear anything apart from the soft fall, armored feet while he walks those same two working girls from the previous night home. He even smells the sweat and adrenaline radiating off their form, catching glimpses of a purple blur in the moonlight, or a glint of a katana in the flickering glow of a lamppost, or a flash of red body armor in the neon of a shop sign. Of course, he loses all of his tail swiftly, dodging a red shuriken and ducking behind a blinding billboard to avoid Robin. Much to his displeasure, he let out a long, convoluted, but very eloquent string of expletives after he lost sight of Peter. God, Peter loves superhearing. The little guy's Shakespearean language is absolutely joyous. Clinging to the wall of a dead-end alley while Red Robin swings above, Peter didn't risk moving lest he be spotted, and as such stays crouched underneath a rusty fire escape and listens to the guy's increasingly confused and annoyed, "What the fucks?" and wiping Bluebird's grappling hook to where it was lodged, leaving her hanging and annoyed, a safe distance from the floor, of course. He wants to be annoying, not mean. The only bat he has major trouble losing is the one that's following him now. He doesn't catch even the slightest glimpse of them the entire time. In fact, the only clue that he was being tailed at all was the murmur of his spider sense, warning him watched, observed, analyzed. It's pretty impressive, to be honest, managing to evade Peter's other senses to the degree that their only flaw is not anticipating his spider sense. But once Peter knows what to look for, it's impossible to miss. All life makes noise, that's a fact. But his stalker is scarily good at bending that fact. If he hadn't been trained by Matt and fought against ninjas and assassins or people made of steam and sand and other weird shit, he wouldn't have a chance at pinpointing them. However, as it is, he can hear the wind hitting and redirecting around their form, feel the air displacement on the rooftop, smell the slight metallic tang of their weapons in the salty bayside air. Peter can hazard a guess and say that his current stalker is Black Bat. You see, even though the images of Gotham's resident heroes are few and far between, there's still documentation of them, if you know where to look. Police reports, civilian testimonies, and various government agencies. Peter isn't going to lie. He's entirely skeptical that Argus is a government branch and not some shadow agency. Managed to cobble together a rough outline of the Gotham vigilante scene. A clear enough picture to know that only a few of the bats actually have ears on their suits. And this is important, because Peter is able to tell the shape of the stalker's head based on the sound of the air flowing around it. Well practiced in the skill by virtue of using it to differentiate Matt from Danny in the field. And his stalker most definitely has bat ears on their cowl. They can't be Signal as he's a daytime-only type of guy. Can't be Batwing, whose suit of armor is loud enough to tip Peter off from his presence from a literal mile away. It couldn't be Batgirl or Batwoman, who both have their hair loose and flying, a sound which Peter would have picked up on instantly. It can't even be the big bad Batman himself, whose sheer size and musculature would displace far more air than whoever is on his tail, which leaves only one person to be following him, Black Bat. And despite his best attempts to swing normally and pretend that he hasn't noticed them, they seem to be aware that he has, and they seem to be as intrigued by him as he is by them. Enough so that they stop in their tracks, leaning over the edge of a building but not jumping to the next. Peter adjusts the arc of his swing and lands neatly on a traffic light, staring up at Black Bat's silhouette. The oily red lights turn to amber. They stay like that for a while, two pairs of large lenses, one white and one black, analyzing each other in the darkness. Amber snaps to green. Simultaneously they move. An outside observer may have suspected telepathy being involved. Just based off the sheer synchronicity of the movement, Black Bat turns on her heels, stalking towards the middle of the rooftop. Peter leaps off a traffic light just as the cars start rushing beneath him. His feet hit the gravel floor the same second that Black Bat turns around. "What do you want?" She signs at him, the movements to the point but slightly wispy. A step away from Cass, large sweeping gestures, and a step towards Miss Lopez, efficient and brutal. Nonetheless, Peter detects the curiosity in the corners of the movement bubbling up through her fingers. To help. She seems to consider that, staying perfectly intimidatingly still while Peter feels her eyes rake up and down his body, seemingly unraveling his motivations and secrets like an old sweater. Her gaze pulling and pulling at the threads of him until he feels naked and bare. Until she finally relaxes a little. It's just a shift in the angle of her back foot, a fraction of a degree out of a fighting stance. But to Peter, it speaks volumes. "Who are you?" "I'm just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." At that, she tilts her head up, appraising, or perhaps judgmental. And then she stalks forward, her pace sleek and predatory. The only thing keeping him from falling into a fighting stance is the notable absence of his spider sense. She stops abruptly in the dead center of the room, posture inviting and fighting, pose completely abandoned in favor of a ballerina stance. Fourth position. He'd learned that from Gwen. Hand outstretched towards him. Peter didn't even think twice before stepping forward to take it. She seems good, earnest, assertive. She reminds him of Kitty, of Cloak, of Cindy. His spider sense has designated her as friend, and that's really all Peter needs. Their fingers barely brush before a scream erupts to his left and a gunshot to his right. Peter's head snaps towards the scream a split second before Black Bat snapped towards the gunshot. They're on opposite ends of the roof in a breath. They spare each other a parting glance before swinging away. Kelly was the one who had screamed. She had come home to find an empty house, a torn-apart bedroom, and a note from her husband, Gavin, detailing that he had taken their daughter, Molly, and wouldn't be giving her back until she coughed up enough money for him to buy himself more drugs. That was 15 minutes ago. Kelly isn't screaming anymore, opting instead to pepper her daughter's face with kisses. Molly isn't in her father's car anymore, tears streaming down her face as she asks where they're going. She's safely cradled in her mother's arms, fisting the fabric in her small 4-year-old hands, and Gavin is webbed to the wall of the alley, accessorized with a web gag as a repercussion of spouting some words that were not appropriate for young ears. Peter's just offering to wait with the pair until the police arrive to pick up the trash, Gavin, when an explosion rocks the floor and sends the mother-daughter pair stumbling. Peter surges forward to help them, but Kelly catches herself on the alley wall and brushes him off. "You should go," she says, gazing up at where the thundering boom had come from, at where orange smoke rises in the dark Gotham sky. "Seems like you're needed." "Yeah," he clenches his jaw, also studying the way the smoke curls above the skyline. "Get inside, shut your door and windows." "What about Gavin?" "I'll drop him off in police custody on my way over." Kelly nods and turns to leave before looking over her shoulder and saying, "Be safe." Peter unsticks Gavin from the wall and holds him underneath his arm like a misbehaving rug. "I'll try." Spider-Man arrives on the scene Gavin-less and prepared for a fight. He can see now from his perch atop an adjacent building that it's an apartment complex that's burning, sending waves of acrid smoke billowing into the sky. The top floor is engulfed in flame. The one beneath that has smoke steadily spilling out of the windows. The fire escape has come loose from the top 4 floors and is leaning away from the building, the remaining bolts screeching in protest. And hovering amid the destruction and the smoke is a man, Firefly presumably, and he's laughing. The manic laughter is stretched and distorted by his mask, a big shiny thing that stretches the span of his head like a motorbike helmet, dark glass resembling insectoid eyes. That, and the mech suit he wears, reminds Peter of Beetle's. Sleek armor, insectoid wings, mech helmet. It's all sturdy, well-made. The only main difference between the two villains is Firefly's backpack-looking contraption. Now that's reminiscent of good old Trapster. The only difference between that Trapster's backpack held glue, and this guy seemed to be filled with gasoline. You might ask, "Hey Spidey, how do you know that the Bug Squad Reject's backpack is filled with gasoline?" And to that, Peter would point out that the backpack is attached to 2 guns that are currently shooting showers of flame into the building and soaking the whole street in a cloying, unnatural heat. So, here's the problem. Peter needs to evacuate civilians. That's always his top priority. But he can't do that until someone subdues the pyromaniac. And for all the vigilantes he'd run into, none of them were in the area. In fact, he had actually led most of them away, so no backup. Which is less than ideal, but not the end of the world. Peter's dealt with plenty of psychos before. Now, Peter's usual go-to for any kind of villain attack is to distract. Let them monologue, let them chase him, as long as it gives civilians time to escape. But every vigilante instinct he's ever honored is telling him that this time that play would be a bad idea. You see, Peter would gladly go ahead with that plan, if it weren't for those damn flamethrowers. If he and Budget Bloom go on a little tour of the Bowery, it's inevitable that nearby buildings will be hit by renegade flames, causing property damage and potential loss of life. And that would be bad. So Peter decides to go with his close second favorite tactic for taking down villains, aka go in fast, hit hard, and quip hilariously. Peter wipes the beating sweat of his forehead with the back of his hand, tensing the muscles in his legs to a perfect coiled rigidity. Spider-Man leaps off the roof, flying tens of feet into the air, but he waits, past the peak of his jump, until he's diving for an unsuspecting Firefly to let a petulant "aww," and the most annoying register he can manage. "I forgot to bring the frickin' marshmallows." The Beetle wannabe spins to face his voice, angling the flames skyward and looking away from the building. Exactly what Peter had been looking for. The flames lick at his skin as he dives into them, the heat of them burning and bubbling the skin of his cheaply made suit, peeling the layers back to get a taste of his flesh. But Peter dives through the flames regardless, compartmentalizing the singe of his skin and the smell of his own cooking tissue as he shoots out 2 lines of webbing, one to each side of the roof they're over. He slingshots himself forward, sparing no thought to the aching of his burnt muscles, placing all his focus on the positioning of his feet as they slam into and crack Firefly's helmet. The force of the kick snaps the rogue's head back, black glass spraying upwards. How are we going to make the s'mores now? Peter doesn't give him a single second to recover, using the man's face as a springboard to launch into a backflip that has him facing the arsonist. He positions his web shooters to have straight shots at the man's flamethrowers, prepared to yank them free from his backpack and disable them permanently, a tactic he's used countless times on Trapster. But at the last second, he adjusts his aim and instead shoots a volley of webs down the barrel of the gun, blocking the fire's path. Yanking this rogue's guns free of his pack would result in gallons of gasoline dropping into an open flame, and not a disgruntled C-tier bad guy trapped in his own glue. He is not in New York City anymore, and he needs to get his fucking head in the game. We can't even play Chubby Bunny. Firefly gives a wordless growl and presses down on the trigger to no avail. Thank you, fireproof webs. But Peter knows that if he keeps it up, the pack is going to explode. Knows that the force alone will be devastating, let alone the debris and the fire. He has to act quickly to save both the maniac dressed as a bug. Blech. Just thinking that makes him feel like JJJ. And all the innocent civilians in the blast radius. Peter attaches a line to Firefly's chest and yanks him closer, aiming a knee to the man's crotch. However, through the smoke and the heat, Peter can't quite see the gun, can't quite decipher the urgency of his spider sense enough to register that its arc is a one-way ticket to his skull, not until it's too late. The two enter a freefall, Firefly's mech wings working overtime to stay in the air with the weight of two people. After a couple of seconds, Peter's brain stops rattling around in his skull enough for him to see straight, and he attaches one line of webbing to a nearby structurally sound building, and the other to what's left of Firefly's mask. And then he pulls, weak muscles straining. Spider-Man lands on a brick wall with two secure feet. Firefly collides with it head first and is instantly knocked out cold. This campfire officially sucks, he tells the arsonist's unconscious form as he secures it to a wall, with a couple well-placed globs of web fluid before he flips away into the smoke. He enters the burning building through a broken window, feet first, the scent of burning plastic thick in his nose. He lands over a mass of broken glass and debris, shards crunching under his weight. There's a brief, ineffectual scan of the building he lands in, but Peter quickly realizes that any type of visual assessment will fail. It's impossible to see anything through the thick, clogging smoke, save for faint flickers of orange flame. But Peter keeps his head down, eyes on the floor, ears pricked. He hears roaring, flames licking at peeling wallpaper and forcing it to crack and crumble. Flames growing and spreading, caressing cheap furniture and making it bubble and burn. Flames crawling up the walls, and flames disintegrating the floors. Flames and flames and flames. But Peter tunes it all out, twists the imaginary radio dial the way Matt taught him to. He lets the flames turn to static, turn to the background noise, forces the hiss of the smoke to fade to white noise and fade to the soundless column of air. He adjusts the angle of his head, drawing up the smaller sounds, analyzing and dismissing them until he finds what he's looking for. Chirp of faucet, useless, gone. Cracking of bricks, worry about that later, gone. Sirens in the distance, too far away, gone. Shifting of burning clothes, unimportant, gone. A whimper, that, there, where's that? Peter lets the sound fill his ears and he surges into the apartment. Jumping over an overturned sofa, navigates around a dining table, bursts through a doorway, and smashes the remaining of the door. The whimper turns to crying, turns to coughs, each noise ringing unrelentingly loud in his ears. He finds him underneath the desk, a boy around Peter's own age, maybe a year or two younger. He has blood running down the side of his head and a nasty, rasping quality to his shallow breast that speaks of smoke inhalation. Peter slings him over his shoulder and continues through the home. He finds two others in that apartment, a middle-aged man and another younger boy. He carries all three outside where an ash-covered woman shrieks at the sight of them. Her thanks are lost to the flames as Peter dives back into the building. 12 more apartments on that floor, 26 people, a cat, and the stuffed bear for a little boy. Somewhere along the way, he notices that the sleeves of his suit have peeled off and given way to smoking, blistering skin. Spider-Man dives back into the building. The second floor only has 13 people, most of them conscious and mobile enough to walk, limp, or crawl their way out. He secures the fire escape with his webbing and goes back in through an open window. There's an old man, a pregnant woman, an unattended baby. He picks them all up and drops them all off outside with as much care as his spasming muscles will allow. There are still more people in the building, though. The fire has spread from 2 floors to 4. He goes back in. Eventually, all the people start melding together, all knobbly elbows and desperate hands and harsh convulsing coughs. Eventually, he can't differentiate between the bubbling, burning heat of the flames and the smoke-clogging air outside. Eventually, an EMT grabs him around the waist and stops him from going back inside. "You have to stop," she pleads. "The building is going to collapse." But her voice is muffled by her gas mask and by the sickly coughs of a man caught in the flames. He doesn't register going back inside, doesn't register the new flames licking at his thighs. Doesn't even register his fingers gripping a chunk of rubble with a crushing hold. What brings him back is the smoke-strangling scream as he lifts the collapsed piece of ceiling off the man. He takes a split second to settle back into his charred skin before pushing the hunk of ceiling aside and surging forward to help the man. He exits the building for the final time, holding the old man bridal style in his arms, tears, sweat, and snot cleaning rivulets from his soot-stained form. He hands off the man to someone wearing a blue coat, who Peter hopes is an EMT. They take the coughing man with the crushed leg with a frantic kind of gentleness. And Peter collapses to his knees as the building collapses behind him, gravel digging into pink, sensitive skin. Some gentle hands drop an oxygen mask to his face, the gas flowing fast and cold through the half-melted remains of his mask. He lets himself sit there for 3 minutes and 27 seconds, regaining control over the muscle spasms in his arms and legs before ripping off the mask and swinging off, riding away on his dwindling adrenaline reserves. The EMT who had just disappeared to get him a bottle of water returns to an empty stretch of pavement, the only proof of the vigilante ever having been there being an abandoned oxygen mask and a blood stain over the cobblestone. She drops her outstretched hand to her side, an offer of water dying on her lips, and makes a mental note to notify Police Commissioner Gordon of a new vigilante. Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 28 of Green Through by Another Fucking Robin. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.